So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how you can systemize your entire business. If you want to stop being the only person who can solve problems in your business, then there's only way out, and that's systemize everything. Like literally, that's the only thing you can do, right? If you don't want to be doing it, you need systems, so you can systemize everything, and then you need a team who can execute on those systems, and that's it. So the more systems you create, the more people can help you solve problems. The faster you can scale, more heads know more than just one, right? But only if those heads have access to what you already know, because you as the founder, you've inserted your knowledge into the business. This is probably what was the main driver behind growth, at least at the beginning stages. And now you need to make sure that people who can come on board and help you grow the business have access to that knowledge, which isn't by asking you on Slack or jumping on a quick Zoom call and things like that. So right now, you're probably hitting a wall of personal capacity. Most founders, they're in this situation. There are only so many hours you can work in a day. There are only so many problems that you can hold in your head and potentially solve. And there's only so many decisions that you can make before you burn out, right? Now, you probably told yourself 100 times that you need to document more, right? Everybody knows that you need documentations and systems and SOP, but how do you actually do it, right? Most people never start, or they start and then they stop. They write a few SOPs. People usually don't look at them. It becomes like an SOP graveyard, basically. But here's the problem, right? Documenting more is not a goal. It's just vague aspiration. It's saying we need to post more on social media. Okay, but what does that mean? Like on which channels? What type of content? How often? What are the goals that we're trying to achieve? How will we know if we're successful or not? That's how you do it. And like when it comes to specific business functions, then people will have some type of measurement in place and tracking, or at least they'll have an idea what they're trying to hit, right? Let's say, all right, we need to have this many sales calls, or we want to increase our sales by this much, or we need to drive down our CAC, or we need to increase our ROAS on ad spend, or whatever it is. Like they'll have some benchmark more often than they will have a system of measurement for how systemized their business is, right? Which is actually a lot more important when you think about it, because it's going to give you way more leverage long term. It's going to allow you to create a system that runs without you, which means it can run on systems and other people can execute those systems. It means you can actually scale. You can't grow if everything depends on you. You can to a certain extent, then you hit a wall. But yeah, a vague aspiration, it's something like, I should write more SOPs, or I need to document things, or we should have better processes. That's a vague aspiration. A measurable goal would be, okay, we are 23% systemized. Our goal is 50% by Q2, right? Or you can say, okay, we have 3 red systems that we want to document this month. I'll explain a little bit more what I mean. But basically, red would mean it's not systemized, it's founder dependent, not good. And green would just mean it's completely systemized, it's delegated, somebody else owns the outcomes, the founder at most has a weekly review on the KPIs and the goals, and that's it, right? Or we say, okay, customer service goes from red to green by March. Or maybe it's yellow right now. It means like you're still like involved, and people still come and ask you, hey, we have a problematic customer. What do I do with it? Or somebody is asking this thing. I'm not really sure like how to answer, right? That means, okay, they're mostly doing it, but they still come to you for feedback and answers and like in specific situations, which means it's yellow, but you want to get it green by March. These are specific measurable goals when it comes to systemizing your business and actually freeing up your time, right? When you think about it, why do we start a business? For time freedom and money freedom. That's it. And really money is just a proxy for time, right? You earn money so you can buy more time and then you can do whatever you want with your life. So yeah, you need a systematic approach to systemizing your business. A way to see what exists, what doesn't, what to build next, right? So this gets you nowhere. Saying stuff like, I should write more SOPs or we need to document things, you're never going to get anything done. But this, we're 23% systemized and we want to hit 50% and then 70% and then eventually 100%. That implies a whole structure behind it, right? Because how will you know when you're 23% systemized? You need a system for systemizing it. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So it first would start with basically a simple audit, right? So you'd create a systems database, right? It's a one master table that tracks every process in your business and whether it's documented or to what degree it's documented and delegated or not, right? So it's like an inventory of your systems, right? So what's in progress, what's already systemized, and what still lives just in your head, right? So there are different ways how you could create your own systems database and how you can track progress and measure things. I'm going to show a couple of different ones. The first one would be you would have a systems database on your command center, right? So on your main dashboard, you would have a systems database for this. Let's zoom in a little bit. And then you would simply list the different processes that are happening inside your business under different departments, right? So let's say under growth, or maybe you want to call it marketing, you would say, okay, Instagram posting, that's one system. Facebook ads, that's another system. Creating new product pages, that's another system. Or generating leads, that's another system. Maybe you have a sales department, be like, okay, how to do sales calls, that's one system. Or how to do audits or discovery calls or whatever you're doing. How to generate leads, that's another system, right? And you list it all out, and then you start assigning these systems as a task to be systemized. So say, all right, we're going to focus on Instagram posting. Let's say you're still the one who's doing it, right? Or like heavily involved. We're like, okay, this is now yellow. This needs to become green. Okay, what do we need for this? We need the process maps. We need the tactical playbooks. We need SOPs. But we're going to start working towards it. This is beyond this video to explain all the little nitty-gritty details of how you actually do it. But what I'm saying is you want to document your current state of affairs. Put all the systems in a table like this, and then you assign a due date, you assign a priority, and then you can also assign it to a person. I would suggest you assign it to whoever owns that. Now, systemizing a core function of a business is quite complex. Not everybody is a system thinker. So like your social media person might not be the person to systemize and create the process maps and SOPs and all this sort of stuff for social media. But they should be involved because they're doing it, right? So you need to probably be the one who's going to be driving this forward with heavy involvement from your team members. There are also like tools out there for doing stuff. You can automate the big chunks of this. But anyway, you want to have a system like this. Another way how you can represent this is to have on your actual systems inventory board, you would have, like just zoom out a little bit. So eventually you have under different departments like marketing, operations, leadership, maybe you have more like HR, finance, whatever you have. You would have everything systemized like this. And then you could just simply color code it and be like, okay, for our, let's say, product pages, if you have an e-commerce store, we have the processes of how you create a new one for a new product, how you measure performance. That's another process, right? So let's say it's all now yellow, and you could just say, okay, this is done. And you could turn it into green. Perfect, good. All right. And then the rest of them are either in process or they're orange or yellow. Like you can pick your own colors. I would suggest like a simple traffic system. We have a little bit more elaborate because we're like experts in systemizing businesses. But basically it's either yellow, green, or red. And then eventually it's all going to be green, and you can just focus one by one. Okay, we're doing, let's say, Facebook ads. We're going to systemize that. And that doesn't mean that you have to be running Facebook ads or even in-house. But even if you're working with an agency, do you have a system and a process for how you work with that agency, how you hold them accountable, how you make sure they get all the assets they need, how you make sure they hit the goals, and if not, what happens and at which points and that sort of stuff, right? So that you're not the one who's doing the calls with them, but you can delegate it, and now it's green. That's basically what it means. Okay, that's another way how you can look at it, right? Or you can just create a simple Google Sheet and start there and just start listing the things that you want to get done, but start thinking about it systematically, right? Make it an actual goal, an actual KPI to how systemized we are. Because once you have, let's go back to this one on Command Center. Once you have a table like this, you can literally measure the percentage of your company that's systemized and basically green, right? In a simple way. And once you have that, then you'll have a, you know what they say, like what gets measured gets improved, right? So that's why you want to be measuring. So again, here you can color code it like this. Red, not started, or basically lives in your head. So the systemization of that core function hasn't even started yet. Yellow, it's in progress. It's partially documented, even if you didn't consciously start it. But if you have somebody who's doing a lot of the activities inside a core process and you're still involved, then that's yellow. Then basically you have a half system, right? And then green, again, finished. And then you could have another one for like needs updated, outdated, needs revisions, that sort of stuff. So again, red doesn't mean failure. It's a diagnosis, right? It's okay, we need to focus on these ones. Same for yellow, right? And for something to be marked green, it has to meet all of these criteria. You need process maps. That's basically visual flowcharts showing the complete process. Let's go back to this one. Let's just zoom into, let's say, Google Ads. You need process maps like this because there are complex things that need to be done in any business, online business or not online business, and you need to map it out like this. So that's step one. Implementation toolkits exist. That means you got SOPs, you got tactical playbooks, you got the KPIs, you have the whole thing that somebody can go through and read and understand like what needs to happen more in detail than the process map shows, right? That's the big picture. That's the nitty-gritty steps that are needed. Then the next thing, your team needs to be trained, right? So whoever's going to be doing whatever activity you're systemizing, obviously once you have the systems, you need to train the person to use it. And yeah, without it, it's not going to run. So that's pretty self-evident. And system is in use, right? So it's actually being used. A lot of the time, people will create like SOPs for some random things. And then a few months later, they realize nobody's actually opening those documents. They're outdated. They even forget like half of the ones that they created and so on. And that's because it doesn't exist in a complete connected ecosystem, right? It's just SOP is like a one tiny little part of systemizing your business. It's literally like maybe 5% of it. They're just random specific pieces of technical instruction. That's what they are. They're not a system, right? They're not even a process. They're like a very tiny piece of the puzzle. So anyway, you need to make sure that the documentation is being followed, not gathering dust. That's basically it. Once you have this in place, then you can turn red to yellow to green. And that's basically your job, right? So let's have a look at a simple example. Let's say you want to systemize and delegate Instagram marketing. And even if you're not doing it, and maybe you think I already have it delegated because there's another person who's doing it, it's not me who's doing it, then great. Then if you really think that it's green, then, just pick another example. But quite often, like, you'll be still half involved. They'll still ask you for feedback and input and help them solve problems and that sort of stuff. But basically, let's look at this example, right? Inside Instagram marketing, you actually have more processes. Content planning, that's one process. How do you plan content, right? You got to like research, all this sort of stuff, right? Content creation, that's a whole new process, right? And it might even not be the same person, and quite often it's not, right? Somebody who's planning the content, somebody who's creating it needs to be a designer or a video editor and that sort of stuff. Then posting and scheduling. Again, you probably don't want your video editor and your designer to spend their valuable and expensive time uploading stuff into Instagram, right? That's a huge manual task and needs to be done by somebody, and you need a process for that, right? Engagement in comments, DM responses, you get a picture. Like inside Instagram marketing, you have specific separate processes. You can't just say, okay, we're going to have a system for Instagram marketing. Yes, that's a process group, and you need to break it down into one level lower, into different processes, and then you get there. So anyway, that would mean, okay, you got like 20% systemized, right? Now, you're just going to ballpark it. It's not like an exact science, and I don't want to overwhelm you with more specific ways of measuring progress, but this would already be good, right? And then, again, you don't even have to put percentages. You can just say, okay, Instagram is clearly red, right? Let's get more of these into yellow and green, and then it becomes more yellow overall, and then it becomes green eventually. Same for a different process, like a sales process. Okay, who's generating the leads? Who's qualifying them? That could be the same person. Who's doing discovery calls? Again, this could be the same person. You still want to see it as different processes because eventually it doesn't have to be the same person, right? You might have a salesperson doing the calls, and you might have an appointment center or just somebody who's generating the leads to do the other stuff, right? Because this might be people who demand different types of salaries, and you want to be more efficient with your budget and that sort of stuff. Now you're going to end up with like real numbers, right? 20% on Instagram, 33% on sales. It's not a vague feeling, it's a measurable baseline. So when you're saying like, okay, this month we're going to focus on completely systemizing the sales process so I can finally step out of it. I don't want to be the guy who's doing all the sales calls or whatever it is, right? Or maybe you like sales and maybe you will do the sales calls and then you're like, okay, cool, it doesn't really matter. You still want to systemize it so that in case something happens to you, sales don't stop, right? That's another reason for it. Let's say, what if you have an emergency or you can't work for a week or two, or a family emergency, you got to go away for it. All sorts of stuff can happen, right? And then, well, if it's not systemized, that's it, like sales stop. And all the rest might keep working. You might have Instagram posts. Okay, nobody's doing the sales call. What good are those Instagram posts? Anyway, you have now real numbers, and that's how you can do it. And this is how you systemize in a systematic way. And here's where it really gets powerful. I would say you want to make systemization of your business a KPI, an objective target, a key result that you want to hit month after month. Just keep improving it. Same way as you want to keep improving your ads performance or your sales team performance is the same way here, right? You're tracking revenue, you're tracking ad spend, customer satisfaction. Why wouldn't you want to track how systemized your business is, which arguably of all things that you're doing in your business is probably the most important one, and it's going to allow you, or it's going to have the biggest impact on your ability to scale and your capacity to scale. Because if you're not systemized, you're always going to be capped at your personal capacity. Even if you have people, it's too many things are coming to you. So that's basically it. And once you have this audit, you can set goals. You can say, okay, here's where we're at. Here's where we want to be. Let's get it done. And now I have a measurable goal. And you can put that on your scorecard. And you can say, okay, week after week, we're going to have a look at this and see how close we are to getting this done. Now, typically, like I said, you as the owner will be the one driving this forward. If you have a great systematic thinker inside your business, you can assign it to them. Or maybe some of your team members can systemize their own processes and stuff. Definitely, they can be heavily involved. But I would not think that you can just simply delegate this and say, okay, you guys need to systemize my business and see you later. It's not going to work. You need to be the main driver because really, this is your main core job as the business owner, right? Is to build the machine that makes sure that the people can perform the activities inside of this machine, right? Like you don't want to be thinking through, let's say, how to do, I don't know, marketing. That's not really your job. You need to go one level higher and create the machine that takes care of the marketing processes and then puts people in place that are going to execute those processes. So anyway, That's a long way of saying, I think this is your responsibility. Then you can have a simply monthly maintenance rhythm where once a month you review the systems. What are the red ones? What are the green ones? You check existing documentation. You pick one improvement and maybe more depending on your team and your capacity, and you just start improving little by little. And the more you will improve, the more things you will move from red to yellow to green, the more time you will have to do even more. So like your results will start compounding, right? But basically that's how you can track improvement. And then you use the database also as an improvement tracker, okay? So let's go back to that database that I showed you on the command center. So then I recommend you create yourself an improvement tracker. That can be a simple Google sheet where your team logs ideas for system improvements. So if they see something broken, they add it into the sheet. If there's a better way of doing something or they notice something, they just keep adding in there. And then you can track everything that needs to be done. You map it to specific core functions in the business. And then you can have a regular rhythm where you guys review this and you say, okay, cool. Every Monday, we're going to have a short meeting when you go through this, or you make this part of your weekly scorecard reviews. You check it, and then you assign what needs to be delegated, what needs to be tweaked, what needs to be improved. Because systems change, your business changes, systems need to evolve. You need to keep them updated, so you need a way to make sure that things don't get outdated. So that's basically it. So again, a 10-minute version for you to get started. Make your first audit. So basically, you can download our resources, the system database template, delete what doesn't apply, right? So just tweak it, make it your own, put it in the process that you're actually executing inside your business, and remove the ones that you're not. Then honestly mark each status, what is red, what is yellow, what is green, based on what I've just talked about and based on you just like knowing your business. Then you calculate your percentage. How systemized are you really? Now you're going to have a simple number. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a way of measuring it, right? So you stick to that number, and then each month you'll see, are you making progress on that number? And then probably circle the top 3 that hurt the most, and those are your priorities, and start moving things. That's basically how you do it. Again, you can download all the templates below, but the main lesson of this video is stop saying I should document more, and we need to write SOPs, and start measuring it, start tracking it, start improving it. What gets measured gets improved. And that's how you stop being the only problem solver in your business. It's not by working harder, it's by systematically building a business where more heads can help, more people can solve problems, and you can finally grow beyond your personal capacity. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.